Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the 700 Club. The Bible says they have sown the wind, now they have reaped the whirlwind. Georgia's governor has declared a state of emergency, calling in 1,000 National Guard troops after an 80-year-old girl was gunned down over July 4th weekend. Scores more Americans were killed and wounded in Atlanta, Chicago, and New York. So why aren't these murders getting the same attention from protesters and the media? Charlene Aaron has that answer.
Georgia's governor is calling out the National Guard to protect the state capitol and the governor's mansion after deadly violence over the holiday weekend. 31 people were shot in 11 incidents, and the State Highway Patrol headquarters was attacked. One of the dead is 8-year-old Sequoia Turner, killed Sunday while riding with her mom and a family friend in Atlanta, not far from the burned-out Wendy's where Rayshard Brooks was killed by a white police officer. The area has since been occupied by armed demonstrators. In an emotional press conference, her parents leveling this accusation.
They say Black Lives Matter. You killed your own. Killed your own this time.
The shootings come after weeks of protests to defund police following the deaths of Brooks and George Floyd. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms says enough is enough.
We are doing each other more harm than any police officer on this force. We've had over 75 shootings in this city over the past several weeks. You can't blame that on APD.
In a statement, Governor Brian Kemp said peaceful protests were hijacked by criminals with a dangerous, destructive agenda. Now innocent Georgians are being targeted, shot, and left for dead. This lawlessness must be stopped and order restored in our capital city. It happened in cities across the U.S. over the holiday weekend. 48 people shot in New York City alone on Sunday, 10 of them dying. The mayor blamed the coronavirus shutdown. White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany called out the media for ignoring the crisis.
I didn't receive one question about New York City shootings doubling for the third straight week, and over the last 7 days, shootings skyrocket by 142%. Not one question. I didn't receive one question about 5 children who were killed.
The weekend marked Chicago's third straight that a child died from gun violence. Speaking on CBN News' Prayer Link, Chicago Pastor Corey Brooks said fear has gripped inner-city parents.
People are scared to allow their children to go out to playgrounds and things of that sort.
Brooks pointing the finger at gang violence.
Unfortunately, a lot of the crimes are being committed by young black males between the ages of 16 to 25. And they're killing young black males between the ages of 16 to 25.
Brooks is using his nonprofit, Project Hood, helping others obtain destiny to bring peace.
We work very hard to make sure that we reach out into the community to these individuals, giving them options and alternatives to change their lives around.
Meanwhile, Pastor Brooks believes prayer can turn the tide in Chicago. Starting July 7th, through an organized effort with local churches, he's calling for 1 million Christians to join him in praying for an end to the violence. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Folks, I would like to make a projection, if you would allow me that option. I project that the crime wave that is being engendered across our nation is going to turn the hearts of people who now give President Trump a 38% approval rating. They're suddenly going to say, if he's the law and order president, we will vote for him. You mark my word, it will carry him through to victory in the election. That doesn't mean that after he's elected, he won't be tested severely by the Chinese, by the North Koreans and others. But I do believe that this wave of violence, women who said we don't like Trump are going to say, but look, he's going to keep our kids from getting shot. And it's black on black that is bringing some of these terrible shootings. 77 shootings in Chicago in one weekend. Unbelievable. Well, the Democrats are going to run on that program, they're not going to be able to do it. If the president would just not get off on all these side trips and start asking for apologies for Bubba Wallace and stuff like that, he doesn't need that. All he's got to do is stay on message for the next 4 months, and he will be reelected. I mean, it's just the way it's going to be. But if he keeps on this tweeting business, I mean, who knows what's going to happen. But he's way down on the polls right now, and I'm sure the Democrats are already popping champagne corks thinking they're going to win it. But just that one thing, law and order. If he says, I'm the law and order president, I'm going to bring law and order to Seattle. I'm going to bring law and order to Atlanta. I'm going to bring law and order to Minneapolis. And the people there are going to say, we don't much like you, but we're going to vote for you to keep us safe. That will be the winning ticket. Well, in other news, scientists are sounding the alarm over a new threat from the coronavirus. And they're calling on the World Health Organization to take action. John Jessup has that story.
That is right, Pat. 239 scientists are calling on the WHO to highlight the possibility that the virus can be spread through the air, not just by contact. They say microdroplets can stay in the air for hours, and social distancing might not be enough to stop the spread. This as nearly 3 million Americans are now infected with the virus. While the number of new cases is rising, the number of deaths, though, remains steady for now, though health experts say those numbers lag about 2 weeks behind. For more, let's now go back to Pat.
Well, we're thrilled today that CBN medical reporter Laurie Johnson is here to tell us about these warnings. Laurie, what's the deal about this virus? Is it hanging around the air for a long period of time?
Well, Pat, some scientists, not all, are referencing limited data that suggests that the virus travels a lot farther than 6 feet. They're saying up to 30 feet with these little tiny microbes called aerosols. And they're saying that these little tiny aerosols can come out of your mouth, and they're so lightweight that they can glide through the air up to 30 feet. Now, this is only inside in areas that are not very well ventilated. But the implication here is huge and expensive, because if this is true, then places like businesses, hospitals, nursing homes, schools are all going to have to revamp their ventilation systems to put in these super expensive, high-powered HEPA air filters and ultraviolet lights that kill the virus. And they're also saying that these tiny little aerosols are so small that the regular cloth masks aren't good enough, that they can penetrate the openings in regular masks, and so we all need to start wearing the N95 masks, because the N95s are the only ones that are tight enough to keep those aerosols out. The good news, Pat, is this is not settled science. Not all scientists agree on this. In fact, they tried to grow the coronavirus with these aerosols in a lab and were unable to do it. The World Health Organization says they're going to go ahead and look at this open letter and consider it.
Laurie, what you're basically saying is it's like playing Russian roulette. You go out to a restaurant, if they open them up, and you're like putting a gun to your head and pulling a trigger, and maybe there's a bullet in it. I mean, it's very serious, isn't it?
It really is, and so I did want to reiterate that most health agencies have not adopted this view, and these scientists, there are more than 200 of them from 30 different nations, and they're trying to get the warning out there that it's not just those heavier droplets that go 6 feet, but these super light aerosols that can go 30 feet. Again, not settled science. This is still up for debate.
Well, what are we learning about the virus and those who develop immunity? Is there an immunity for it developed, or is it not?
There is an immunity, and what it all depends on are antibodies. We know that these antibodies are what fight off the coronavirus, and so we need to have a lot of the antibodies. We need our body to make a lot of them, and they need to stay protective for a long period of time. And so it's still under observation. Still, scientists aren't sure regarding a vaccine, how much of an antibody response a vaccine will provide, and then also how long it will protect a person infection. So they're looking at the possibility, even the likelihood, Pat, of perhaps needing booster shots. But speaking of antibodies, we know that the convalescent plasma is a great way to transfer antibodies to people who are sick. And then there are also some very exciting treatments available now. Regeneron, they're in the last stages of testing, and it's actually an IV infusion of antibodies that has been shown to work on coronavirus patients, but also it's targeting people who live with people who are not symptomatic, who don't have coronavirus, but are at great risk of getting it, sort of in lieu of a vaccine, and will be available much sooner than a vaccine. It's already being mass produced so that if these trials turn out to be successful, it will be ready earlier than a vaccine.
One last question. We have talked over and over again about the gut and about our immune system. What can we do as just normal human beings to keep from having this dreadful disease come upon us?
Great question, Pat, because there's so much we can do. We know that the majority of people who die from the coronavirus have at least one comorbidity, one of these underlying conditions like obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, lung disease. And so a lot of these things, not all of them, but a lot of them, we can control. Type 2 diabetes, for example, and we can strengthen our immune system. There are so many things we can do to strengthen our immune system so that our body does make a lot of these antibodies if we become infected. We know that so many people, as many as 99% of people who are infected with the coronavirus do survive, and these are people who have the stronger immune system. So yes, gut health, all the supplements. We know that zinc is very effective. Eating right, getting a lot of sleep, and even fasting, believe it or not, is really good for your immune system.
Lori, come back. It's always good to have you with us. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, John, you got some other things in the news that's going on, like the nature has turned against us. Tell us about it.
That's right, Pat. Turning to weather, heavy winds and thunderstorms are threatening the high plains and upper Midwest today. The Dakotas expected to be battered by damaging wind gusts and hail, making it 6 days in a row of severe weather for the area. In Montana, forecasters predict the possibility of 1 or 2 isolated tornadoes. Meanwhile, heavy rains expected in the southeast today could leave Louisiana, Georgia, and South Carolina seeing up to 1 to 2 inches of rain. Well, fans are mourning the loss of a country music icon and Southern rock legend. Charlie Daniels suffered a stroke and died Monday at the age of 83. Ephraim Graham has more.
In his country music career, Charlie Daniels also earned Dove Awards for his gospel albums. The Country Music Hall of Famer often shared his faith story, including multiple appearances here on CBN.
I wouldn't trade places with anybody in the world. I love what I do. I love being Charlie Daniels.
And fans loved Charlie Daniels. Many lined the streets of Mount Juliet, his Tennessee hometown, for the emotional and patriotic escort of his casket draped in an American flag.
He's a true patriot. He's helped out with our military for as long as I can remember. We've worked with him off and on for 15 years.
The singer, songwriter, guitarist, and fiddler began his career in the early 1970s as a sessions musician, even playing for Bob Dylan, selling millions of albums and touring sometimes more than 250 shows a year.
You've heard his music. He is one tremendous singer. Charlie Daniels, would you give him some applause? Charlie, it's good to have you with us.
Good to be with you, Pat.
Man.
Daniels made a few stops on the 700 Club along those tours, sitting down with host Pat Robertson just a few years ago.
You had a couple other really big hits.
We had a song called "The Devil Went Down to Georgia" in 1979 that has been our signature song, you could say.
Always giving a gentle nod to the faith he was happy to share with others.
I believe that Jesus Christ was the only begotten Son of God, that he came to earth, that he was nailed to a cross for my sins, that he left here, he ascended, and he's going to descend one of these days. He's going to come back and pick us up.
Charlie Daniels was 83. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
The consummate crossover artist, Pat, during that last interview with you, he said he was exposed to all kinds of music growing up and that his style was mixing it all together.
He was a great musician. He wrote music, a Grammy Award winner, one of the great of country music, and a dear friend. We miss him. And Well, he's with the Saints now, but boy, he was fun. I mean, tell you, he was fun. He'd play that fiddle till the strings would break off his bow, you know. I mean, he was a character.
Yes, well, he came for many special occasions here.
Yeah.
I know he really loved his friendship with you and appreciated CBN. And it was always, he was one of the highlights of the celebration.
Always. Well, we miss him, and
Yes.
he's with the angels where he wanted to be.